Hello, welcome everybody. Thank you for attending this talk. So, yes, we're going to talk about, is AI a tool or an intelligent entity? And before I dive into this presentation, I'd love to get, if you'll indulge me, kind of a quick show of hands on either side of this question before you're biased by what follows. So how many people here kind of consider AI a tool? If you consider it a tool, raise your hand. Okay, I would say, just eyeballing that, a little more than half maybe. And how many people think it's an intelligent entity?
You should have both also, or both.
Why
Or, so it could be that it's evolving from one to the other. That's another possibility. There's a number of possibilities. So that's more of an even split than I expected, but it'll be interesting as we go through. So this talk, I'm going to kind of cover what some of the leaders in tech are saying about AI on this question. And then we'll find that it has implications for AI safety. So if you're viewing AI as a tool, that sort of comes with one set of assumptions about safety. If you're viewing it as an intelligent entity, maybe that's a whole nother set of assumptions. And then I'm briefly going to talk about one potential safer architecture for very advanced AI like AGI and SuperIntelligence. I could easily give an entire talk on that, but I'll try to cover it in a single slide and we'll walk through that, and then we'll hit the key takeaways. So I'm going to begin with 4 very short video clips from some of the leaders. I'll try to set them up before I play each one. So the first one, some of you may be familiar with Lex Fridman. He's a podcaster, computer scientist out of MIT, has a pretty wide following. He's interviewed everybody from Bernie Sanders to Donald Trump, the Prime Minister of India, as well as all the tech leaders, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Jensen Huang, and so forth. So in this clip we're going to see, this is in 2023, so it's a little bit early. He's talking to Sam Altman, one of the founders of OpenAI. And one of Lex's techniques is he does very long interviews. So by the time you get to like hour 2, your guard's kind of down, and then he asks these questions, and you get some interesting responses. So let's hear what Sam Altman has to say on this question of whether AI is a tool. And it starts with Lex. But before we do that, just a quick note that for most of history, and all of you who raised your hand about saying that AI is a tool, most of history has been about tools. So it's not surprising that when we have a new technology, that's kind of the default assumption, because that's kind of what humans have been doing for a long time. Okay, so on to Lex and Sam Altman.
I anthropomorphize aggressively, and certainly most humans do.
I think it's really important that we try to explain, to educate people that this is a tool and not a creature.
So here, and you can see the date down there, March 25th, 2023. At least at that point in time, you have Sam Altman saying, look, we have to educate people. This is a tool. It's not a creature. It's not an entity. And he actually has a pretty strong view about that. Lex anthropomorphizes. Let's hear what somebody else, we'll move forward in time now to October of 2025 and listen to Jensen Huang. So Jensen is speaking at GTC, which is the biggest conference for NVIDIA that is held every year. And he has something interesting to say.
The reason why I know these are tools is because you use them. The tools industry, just as screwdrivers and hammers, the tools industry is only so large. In the case of IT tools, that could be database tools, these IT tools, it's about $1 trillion or so. But AI is not a tool. AI is work. That is the profound difference. AI is in fact workers that can actually use tools.
And there's a business reason with a lot of these folks, not to be cynical, but there's always a business angle, right? So with OpenAI, I think there's some concern that people would be frightened if you start talking about intelligent entities instead of tools, so especially early on. So we saw in 2023, Altman was sort of downplaying that. Here, Jensen, he's saying the tools industry is about $1 trillion, but actually the market for entities that use tools is about 10 times bigger. It's about 10 trillion. So there's an economic reason for sort of making this shift and beginning to sort of present it. And what I found with Jensen, I followed him for many years. He's put my kids through college through NVIDIA stock, which is I very much appreciate. What I found with him is he usually is thinking about things 2 or 3 years before he actually announces it. So he's been thinking about this for quite some time. Okay, let's move on to Jeff Mann.
I think a better model is that we're currently like the parents. The AI is like the child. We're raising this AI, but we know that eventually the children will be in charge. We have to accept that. And so when we raise them, we should somehow make them care for us. Our best hope is to make them be very caring about people.
So this is a very different view. We're now moving from, AI is just a tool user to AI is clearly an intelligent entity in Hinton's view. And I really like this characterization. I've seen Hinton's view evolve over time. At one point he was saying AI is like a mother. Now he's saying AI is like a child. And to me this is the closest view to my own in the sense that when you think about a parent and a child, certain things come with that mental model. One of them is that this child is taking its values during a formative period before it grows up. And then of course the child will do whatever the child's going to do. And if we do a good job as parents with our children early on, then our hope is that they will turn into positive, productive human beings. And I think that model is very powerful because it sort of implies, as Hinton's saying, that we have a limited window now at this time when AI still is in the state that it's in, where we could sort of impress positive human values. So that's what I like about this. I have one more clip and then we'll move on to other things. So the last clip is one, it starts with a presentation I did before the release of GPT. So before this whole AI craziness got kicked off, I gave a talk called How to Build AGI and Not Die. And so there's a clip from that. But what's also important about it is we have Demis Hassabis, and so you can kind of hear his view. And this is early on. We're now going back, before the earlier clip.
AGI is not a tool.
If you had something that could outperform human beings across a wide range of cognitive tasks, could we still regard that as a tool?
I don't know the answer to your question. I think that's part of this journey, is at what point would these things not become just tools?
And this is where that way that we're used to thinking of technology as a tool, a power saw, you want to make the power saw a little safer, you put a guard on it, or you have some instructions on how to use it safely. But it's a tool, and you can always turn it off. No, AGI is not like that. AGI is an intelligent entity. I think thinking of it as a tool really gets us down the wrong path.
So I've now revealed my bias that I've held for a number of years. So enough of the video clips. You've kind of got sort of a range of some of those leaders, including Demis Hassabis, who was open-minded way back, even before GPT came out, saying at some point it may be a tool. It's an open-ended question. So how we classify AI matters. We're going to try the clicker again. Oh, yes. So there's implications for design. There's implications for how you regulate it. So you could imagine if AI is a tool, well, we can regulate it the same way we regulate airplanes or something. And there's advanced airplanes with autopilots, but we don't really consider them intelligent entities. And we have the FAA, so maybe regulation is going to work the same way it does for other tools. And certainly in terms of how we keep it safe. So we don't worry too much about the values that an airplane has, but if AI is an intelligent entity, maybe we do worry about the values and how to keep those alive. So the classification is very important from that perspective. And if it's a tool, some things kind of come along with the idea of having a tool, that it's purpose-built, it's built for a specific purpose, it has limited scope. Very importantly, that you can turn it off. So I was at that conference I mentioned in Paris, and one of the most popular presentations was a gentleman from Carnegie Mellon who his whole thing was, can we have an off switch for AI? And I think a lot of people resonated with that. Is there a way to actually have an off switch? And tools, definitely, you can have an off switch. Intelligent agents, it gets a little trickier. So thinking of tools, there's models that we're all familiar with, large language models, image generators, specialized AI agents. Okay, but if we're talking about intelligent entity. So if we're talking about AGI as an intelligent entity, what then? So first of all, I guess maybe it's helpful to define AGI. Some people feel we've already reached AGI. Sam Altman has said, look, if you go back 2 years ago and now look at the models we have today, everybody 2 years ago would say the models today have already reached AGI. So there's this question of are the goalposts moving and definitions. The most common definition that I've run across is that AGI is AI with sort of average human cognitive ability across, all cognitive domains. And so I don't think we've quite reached that. It's getting close. But if you had that, then what? Well, along with it comes this capability of setting its own goals, which is very important. Learning from experience, operating across lots of open-ended domains, new problems that it's never seen before, it's able to deal with those, and that it can broadly outperform, or even if you define it as average human ability, it won't stay there very long because of the learning, and it will get more and more intelligent, right? And this is the argument that many people have made, and going all the way back to Alan Turing, believe it or not, in the 1940s, shows you how visionary he was. The field of AI was named in 1956, but in the 1940s, Alan Turing was writing about it, and he basically described this self-improvement loop, where if you have an intelligence that's able to learn and self-improve, at what point do you not get this runaway sort of scenario? And others like David Chalmers have also written extensively about this. Okay, and so it could rewrite its own cognition. And then the question is, when you have a system that can do all these things, if you built your safeguards sort of thinking that you're just building another tool, is that going to be sufficient? Can it still protect us? Okay, and so here's a little graph, and all of you have probably seen these exponential curves. This is just sort of conceptually explaining kind of what I consider to be the main evolutionary points here. You started with narrow AI. Of course, narrow AI are just AI systems that are very good in a narrow domain, like chess, or folding proteins, or maybe even driving a car. And that was kind of an era, and that quickly, I remember going in 2003, 2004, I'd go to AI conferences, and I'd mention agentic AI, and they'd say, oh, that's an interesting thought. We should put that on our list of things to research. Very few people, there were a few, but not a lot of people were doing agentic AI in 2023 or even 2024. By 2025, it was everywhere. That's how quickly it went. It went from nothing to like the entire conference was all about different agentic AI systems. And now we're moving very close to AGI, and then my contention would be SuperIntelligence will not be much later than AGI, because once you have a system that can do everything a human can do and can self-improve, it's a very small step to then improve to the point where you're better than humans at all of those cognitive tasks. And I've learned through 30 plus years in Silicon Valley and in academia that to be very mistrustful of any kind of exponential chart. They look exponential until they're not. It's always possible there's an asymptote, that the curve slows down. Just because it appears that you're on an exponential doesn't mean that it's going to stay that way. But I think there's some evidence which to me is very alarming, and which I think we need to look at the actual speed at which AI is progressing. And so I mentioned here AI is currently doubling in intelligence every 4 months. Let me drill down on that a little bit. So here's a chart from Andrew Ng. So, very distinguished person, the former director at Stanford AI Lab. He's a member of Amazon's board of directors. And he is using a chart. This chart comes from metro.org. You can go find it. And it's one of the benchmark charts that's making the rounds of Silicon Valley these days. And basically what it's saying, that's a log. The line is a log scale. But it's saying that the length of a task that AI can do. So in the beginning with ChatGPT, you could ask a question, it could give you a response. It took on the order of 3 seconds or something. But now AI is able to do longer and longer cognitive tasks. At one point it could do 4 minutes, and then it could do 15 minutes, and I think now it's up to about 15 hours. So you can give it one task, you could not interact with it, and it can do this same kind of task that would take a human 15 hours of solid work to do. That's kind of the progression. And this ability to do longer and longer tasks historically has been doubling about every 7 months, which is really fast, but that's historically from 2019 to 2025. It turns out for specific tasks, like if you focus just on coding, it's doubling every 70 days, which is just insane. I mean, it's like humans are not built to process exponentials, but doubling something every 70 days, a cognitive ability, I mean, that is incredibly fast. But there's more. So here's that same chart. This time, this is with some notes from a researcher at Anthropic, Nicholas Carlini. He's a research scientist. And this is from a very recent presentation, March, so just about a month ago, at a cybersecurity conference called the Unprompted Conference. And this gentleman, Dr. Carlini, is in charge of sort of Anthropic's latest models and using them to hack things. How is its hacking ability going? And he pointed out that this chart, which has been making the rounds, yes, it's every 7 months it's doubling if you go all the way back to 2019, but if you look from 2024-25, it's actually doubling every 4 to 5 months. And if you look at 2005 to 2026, it's doubling every 3 to 4 months. And he is very concerned, very concerned. So this talk came out about 2 to 3 weeks before it hit the mainstream news with Mythos. You guys are probably familiar with Mythos, the latest model from Anthropic that they're holding back because they're worried it will hack all the financial system. And there's an emergency meeting with Scott Bessent and JP Morgan, Chase, Jamie Dimon's, largest bank in the world. So there's a lot of concerns. And to just give you one more data point on this, so this is a paper I've circled in red by Winnie Zhao et al. And at Anthropic, there's a little group, and what this group does is it uses the latest models to actually hack things, real things that are supposed to be unhackable, like blockchain contracts, smart contracts that have millions of dollars at risk. And so they wrote a paper in December saying that these AI agents, their latest AI agents, can actually hack these and can come up with millions of dollars by doing the hack. So that's not great, but what's a little bit more scary is how quickly the model is improving at doing this. And this time, instead of 70 days, which was the fastest we've talked about so far, this model, which is hacking and getting real money from blockchain contracts, it's doubling its ability to do that every 1.3 months, which is just crazy, crazy fast. So I am gonna zoom ahead. So we're obviously gonna have to talk about safety, and maybe there's some problems with the current approach to safety, which is basically trying to tack on safety things after the fact, filter the output, do patches. I'm going to argue that you really need aligned values, like Jeff Hinton was saying. If we're moving towards intelligent entity, the focus has to be on values. How do we get those values? And now there's going to be a real test of how fast I can go through this model, which is a whole presentation in itself. Here is a different approach than what mainstream folks are doing to develop a safe architecture. So the traditional approach is you build a bigger and bigger large language model, and every time you throw more data and GPUs at it, it gets more intelligent, but it's a giant black box which is inherently unsafe, and you can only sort of test safety in after the fact because you can't predict where it's going to hallucinate or anything like that, right? That's the traditional model. This is a different model. It comes from collective intelligence. I built collective intelligence systems for over 2 decades, and so I know they work, I know they can be built. And this approach says, wait a minute, what if we do something different? We know that AI agents are all the rage. The next logical step from AI agents is AI agents working together in groups. What if these AI agents, everybody in this room has an AI agent and it's customized. It's trained, not only on your individual expertise, but most importantly on your values and on your ethics, so that we have millions of these AI agents, each one representing different values based on the different humans. Then let's have a common cognitive architecture so they can all talk to each other and also talk to humans. That's been invented, I won't go into it. And let's put them on a network. So now all these agents are working together on a network and they're solving problems. It's the network itself, not the individual AI agent, but the network itself that becomes super intelligent or exhibits that very high degree of intelligence. Just like you can have millions of humans beat the best guys on Wall Street, I built a whole company on that and proved that that could work on real money. You can have millions of AI agents and humans working together with the right architecture and exhibiting very high levels of intelligence. It would be transparent, just because, for the same reason in a democracy, we have transparency and safety. You don't know what I think, I don't know what you think, but when we take actions in a democracy, our actions become visible. When these agents act on the network, their actions become visible. You have transparency, and you can have checks and balances. If I have the bad set of values and do something bad, somebody else can serve as a check on me. The community can serve as a check. So it's possible to design advanced AI in a different way, in a collective way, where the actions are transparent, where the values are broadly distributed across millions of people and are representative not of 20 people at Anthropic in a room who wrote a constitution, which is kind of the current best we got, but instead across 8.2 billion people. It's actually representing everybody's values in their agents working together in a collective way. Hopefully we'll talk more about it in the questions. And this entire system can learn. As you solve problems, instead of having to solve the problem again, you can retrieve the answer. As ethical conflicts come up, there's conflict resolution mechanisms for that. It can learn ethics, it can learn technical things as well. So there's a different way to do this. I've got a whole site, SuperIntelligence.com, which I was only able to get because I thought about this in 2006, before the book SuperIntelligence came out. You can go there and there's like literally 1,000 pages of specs or white papers or videos, whatever you want to learn more about it. I don't have much time, so let me wrap up. Okay, key takeaways. Early in my career, I wrote a book on software quality at IBM. I can distill that entire book down to this: an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That is the way to do it correctly for software development. It's also the correct approach for AI. We have to think about what's coming down, and we have to design a system, prevent the problem. Don't try to detect it at the end and then put fixes on later. This stuff's moving too fast, as we've just seen. So we have to think ahead and say, what would be a better design? For example, the collective intelligence design. That inherently has robust distribution of values and checks and balances built into the very architecture. Doesn't have to be that approach, but it has to be some approach. And it has to be designed, and it has to be preventative. That's the key takeaway. And then I think it helps if we realize that AGI may not be a tool, or if it's a tool now, it may not stay a tool. We're moving towards this intelligent entity. And then you have to figure out, whatever your design is, some way to get those values embedded at the architecture level. Not tacked on after, not in one place in the Constitution that could be overwritten, but broadly and robustly distributed across the system in a way that it's really hard to get those human values out. And then the last point, we have to begin now, while AI is still in this late tool or early agentic stage. And it's kind of like what Hinton's saying. If AI is like a child right now, then we have to work together to teach our children well, because there will be a point where it surpasses us. So this is more contact info, and thank you very much for your attention.
Very sorry for all the glitches that happened.
That's all right.
Technology. I love that AI as a on and off switch. I think that's really a great takeaway.
That would be nice to have one, for sure.
We are at exactly 10:55, which is actually the time without the presenter presents, but I can take a quick one question. It is a very burning issue.
Very quick. I guess I'll just speed it if we can talk after. I'm curious, getting a universal set of commonly shared values, how do you envision actually implementing that collection and iteration on that?
So I think the set of values should be broadly representative of all people. I don't think it's going to be common. It's going to be messy, just the way it is in democracy. Just like you go to different cultures, you have different values. That's okay. I don't envision like there's one set of values that everybody agrees on. Instead, what I'm envisioning is there's millions of agents, and there's lots of conflict between these agents, but there's also conflict resolution mechanisms. It's kind of like in democracy, it's the worst form of government except all the other forms. It's that same idea. This is going to be very messy, but the good news is that human beings right now, each year, the number of people that die from violent war and conflict is less than 1/10 of 1%. I would take those odds of destruction, way over like Hinton, who's putting it at 10 to 20% possibility of extension from AI. So the whole game is put the odds in humans' favor, or shift them a little bit, and it's going to be messy, and it's not going to be one set of agreed upon values. But thank you for the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.